Hey, welcome to the Brave Family Podcast, episode number 3. And today we're talking about defending family culture. Here at the Brave Family Podcast, we believe that strong families build strong communities. JJ?
Come on. Oh, JJ.
JJ?
What is this? This is the newsroom over here? No, back to JJ.
Back to JJ.
Yeah, it's great. So today we're talking about defending family culture. How do you defend your family culture? Because at the end of the day, it's not what you preach. It's what you tolerate that matters. That's the thing that moves the needle. As a matter of fact, Dr. Jordan Peterson said this. He said, never let your children do anything that will make you dislike them.
Oh, that's so good.
And a little ouchy all at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
So ouchy.
That's right. So why is that important? Why is it important to not let your kids do anything that would make you dislike them outside of the obvious? But, I think we allow our kids to do stuff that makes us not like them all the time.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can look at moms and dads all over social media talking about what they think of their kids, right?
Well, it's just amazing how much parents outsource their influence for the sake of convenience, for the sake of just laziness.
That's true.
So I would say, you want to talk about the real pandemic? The real pandemic is parents are outsourcing their influence to things like social media and to things like an overscheduled calendar instead of actually being in the driver's seat of their family.
Yeah, that's exactly right. At the end of the day, like we can preach all we want, the behaviors that we want to see, the feel that we want to have in our family. We can plan it. We can talk about it all day long. But until we're willing to kind of stand in the gap and defend the things that we really want, we're not going to get there. And this is really important because this is the fast forwarding. This is what happens. Like everything with building family, it's all long game. When you're talking about building family, it's like, what do you want to see in your kids when they're adults? I mean, you're talking 20, 30 years from today. What do you want to see in your relationship with your spouse in the next 20, 30 years? So it's all long game, but defending your family culture, being able to kind of stand in the gap and say what you're going to tolerate, what you're not going to tolerate is really what fast forwards this process for people. Like it's not going to take you 20 years to experience the family culture you want if you're willing to defend your family culture. You will take years off of your ability to experience the family that you always dreamed of if you'll defend your family culture.
And you can have the family that you've always dreamed of. I think you and I really truly believe that. We started out this journey just wanting kids that we could enjoy. And so many times parents get caught up in the consequences. What kind of consequences are we going to use? You read books about consequences, and they also, they get caught in a format or rules and regulation when really it's more about priorities.
Well, absolutely. I mean, like disciplining your kids or correcting your children is like one tool in your tool belt as it relates to defending family culture. A lot of people, they look at disciplining their kids as the one tool that you use to get the behavior out of them, which, okay, I mean, you can get behavior modification out of that, but that does not determine what the experience you're going to have with your family. As a matter of fact, we see this in the life of Jesus. I mean, we're Jesus followers, where the Sermon on the Mount was Jesus defining what the culture was he wanted to have in the kingdom. I mean, as a matter of fact, the fact that he came and talked about the family of God instead of the people of God, he was saying, hey, we're going to be a family now, not just a group of people any longer. So good. And then he went down and the Beatitudes and that whole Sermon on the Mount is these are the values of our family and
this
our
is
kingdom.
What it looks like to be in our family.
And then he defended it by when the disciples did something they weren't supposed to do, he loved on them, but it was like, hey, we're not going to do it that way. For example, Peter in the garden, right? He cuts off the soldier's ear. Jesus slaps it back on the ear, looks at Peter and goes, put that thing away. What are you doing? This is not the attitude of the people of the kingdom, right?
So good.
And so what we say is we use the 4 Ps, of defending family culture. And they're this, and I'll give them all to you quick. We'll talk about them a little bit. But again, listen, you can download the family culture framework. We're going to have it down in the link below. It'll walk you through it. It's free. We just want to help you have the best family that you want, okay? But here's the 4 Ps of defending family culture. It's priorities, purpose, people, and prayer.
So
priorities, purpose, people, and prayer. Let's talk about priorities for a minute, right? How do these things defend your family culture? Priorities. Once you lean into that.
Well, one of the biggest things.
I'll throw a pro tip in there.
All right. So with priorities, we all know that the big rocks go in first. So what are those big rocks that we have as a family?
Go
What
into
are
what?
our
Like,
priorities?
what are we talking about right now? Like, when you say the big rocks go in, what does that mean? They go into what? Our calendar.
Our
right?
calendar.
Like, that's what we're talking about. Like, priorities is like, our priorities live in our calendar.
Right.
Right.
We can't be a victim of our calendar. We can't let the school define what we have time for. We choose what we have time for.
That's right.
And what makes our list. You know, I think one day you took me out for lunch and you had your little list in front of you, and I said, honey, I'm enjoying having lunch with you, but I want to be more than just a check on your list. And you said, baby, if you're not on the list, you don't make the calendar. Hey, you should just be happy you're on the list because I prioritize
That's
you,
right.
honey.
The priorities make the list, right?
And I think you've done a great job of actually prioritizing our kids. Yeah. We actually schedule time with our kids on the calendar because, hey, our middle kid, he doesn't function unless he gets time to be the number one kid. And so we have to isolate him from the rest of the family. I was just talking to a friend yesterday, and she was saying with a middle child, you know, I feel like their behavior is kind of sliding out. Well, with our second, his behavior was always sliding out. His, you know, he wasn't quite right unless we pulled him away from the family to be the star, to be the only one. And that was a result of putting him on the calendar strategically because we valued him.
Because the reality is this, when you have well-defined priorities, what it does for you is it gives you a strong no.
Yes.
So that you
so
can
good.
say yes to the right things.
That's right.
You know, because otherwise it'll get out of control. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing about a calendar that's really important. And this is the pro tip for you, is your calendar is a tool. Your calendar, actually, it's a shield and it's a weapon to defend your family culture.
Yeah,
and this is why. Because the calendar gets to be the bad guy. Like for those,
absolutely.
Listen, for those of you wonderful passive aggressive people that are out there, you know, passive moms and dads who don't want to be the bad guy and say no to the things your kids want to do, or say no to the all the opportunities that are out there. Well, you get to let your calendar be the bad guy, but just say, man, I'm sorry, my calendar won't allow it. Right? Now all of a sudden your calendar's the bad guy. You don't have to be the bad guy anymore because you put your priorities in the calendar, and now the calendar won't allow it. That mean old calendar just won't let me do it, right? But so you have to use your calendar in that way, but we always set our priorities, because your strong priorities will give you a strong no, so that you can say yes to the things that matter. And the things that matter are the second P, and that's really that's around purpose. Your purpose will defend your family culture because you're going to schedule things that only help you discover and live out your purpose as a family and for your kids. Listen, you were put on this planet for a reason. Your kids were put on this planet for a reason. God gave you those kids for a reason, and it's your job as a parent to help them discover it. And it's your job as a parent to help discover what your family's purpose is, and your culture of your family, it needs to be fulfilling whatever that purpose is. Like that's part of our family culture. Like we know what our purpose as a family is, and so therefore we schedule things to help strengthen that in our family.
Right. I think in the last podcast we were talking about identity and how important shaping identity is. Yeah. And so when we're drawing out the greatness in our kids, we're showing them their purpose. We want them to live more for just themselves. And so, you feel the push of, hey, there's something wonderful about you. You're an individual. You have greatness in you. We're pulling out that greatness. But if you don't steer that towards their purpose, then it's too easy for them to just kind of become self-centered and self-focused.
That's really good. As a matter of fact, the data bears this out, because what the data says is if you want to raise resilient kids, you actually put them in position to serve other people. Serving others is actually what creates resilience in their kids, because then everything's not just based on them anymore. Right? And so what you're doing is you're defending your family culture away from the selfishness. There's that gravitational pull within our families, our kids, and even the adults in the family to make it all about us.
Right.
But when we build that purpose out, what we're doing is we're using it for the greater good, which creates resilience and strength. And hey, we believe strong families, they build strong communities.
And also by pulling that purpose out, it really helps them to honor one another in the family and kind of diffuse some of the sibling rivalry that's there, because they're serving really one another. And so it's creating less conflict. They're valuing one another because they understand that their purpose and their greatness might be different than their sibling, but we're creating creating value within the family so that they can be a unit that really does
that's
something
right.
great.
Yeah, the third P is people, and this is important. And I want to say something that maybe is a little bit counter to this idea of surrounding your family with the right people, because we put so much emphasis on friends.
Right.
Like if my kids have the right friends, if
Right.
you know, for us,
in the right school, get the right friends,
right school, the right church,
on the right team,
got to be on the right team, in the right sport, depending upon the community that you live in. Here where we live, hockey's a big thing, and that's the big sport. Whatever that is. But also in church, right? It's like, hey, I want my kids to be around good Christian friends. I want them to have and all that stuff, and that's great. And friends are important.
Friends are important.
But friends pale in comparison to having good godly mentors in your kid's life. If you do not surround your kids with good godly mentors, there's going to be a time when you don't have the influence that you want to have over their lives.
Right.
And those mentors will, and they will stand in the gap,
That's
and
great.
it will defend the culture that you're really fighting for
sure.
in your family.
Yeah, because our influence only walks so far with them. We change positions with how we influence our kids.
As a matter of fact, we should do another podcast about that, where we talk about the different seats that you sit in as a parent, or that your kids sit in as a parent throughout kind of your parenting career.
But I like what you're saying, that when we lose their ears, they still go to their mentors. Those mentors still have that influence, and that's really important. With people.
And years later, I mean, the influence of mentors on your kids will go years later.
Right.
I would put more emphasis on the mentors that are around your kids than I would their
mentors
friends.
that back up your values.
I mean, 100% of the time. Now, that was not always our story. That's something that we've learned, kind of by default, and a little bit like the hard way, with just our relationship, our marriage relationship, and with our relationship with our kids. And then
the fourth one is
prayer. Yeah.
Absolutely. Not only are we praying for our kids daily, but we're modeling prayer for our kids so that they're also they're cultivating a lifestyle of prayer.
Yeah. And I don't know where you land on this, but we believe that there are spiritual forces at work in the world, and that there is an enemy out there that is trying to steal, kill, and destroy everything that matters to the heart of God. And guess what, everybody? Your family matters to the heart of God.
That's right.
Like, man, it's why divorce is so high. It's why kids are so rebellious against their parents. Like, there's a spiritual force that's driving that tearing of the family unit that's out there, and your prayers will make all the difference in the world as it relates to that spiritual battle and the enemies that are around our families.
Right. I think in prayer, we're really modeling how we relate to the Father God. And that's so important to know, just like you were talking about earlier with Jesus, talking about the family of God, that they can go to the Father God as part of the family, that they have rights and privileges as children of the Most High God. And just where we may fail as parents, God never fails.
Yeah, that's right. And I think building that culture of prayer around it, it really does defend the culture that we're going for as a family moving forward. And there's the 4 P's of defending family culture.
That's
Listen,
good.
Everybody, we truly believe that you can have the family that you've always wanted, but it's going to take defending that family culture.
Great job.
Hey, that was a good one. High five.